Hi folks, Gabe Garrish here with Backwoods Pursuit, and today we're going to do a Gunwerks Nexus rifle review. I have been using and testing the Nexus rifle for the last 10 months, putting it through a number of different scenarios, situations, and tests, as well as hunting with it this fall on my rifle elk hunt. Also going to go over the unique features that the Nexus rifle gives you. It has a lot of things that some rifles don't offer you out there. And finally, I'm going to go over the things I liked and didn't like after using this for the last 10 months. I'll put a link to our website, backwoodspursuit.com, where we have a full written review on this Nexus rifle, as well as a bunch of other gear reviews certainly worth checking out. Let's get started. First up, let's briefly look at the 5 tests we ran the Nexus rifle through. First one, when we got the rifle, we ran it straight out to the desert and challenged the 1,000 yards out of the box claim. This is the long range package, by the way, so it came with the scope mounted and dialed in for a 1,000 yards out of the box performance. Ran straight out to the desert. You can watch the full video here if you'd like to, but the short version is it passed that test, hit steel at 1,000 yards on the very first shot I fired out of this rifle. Didn't even take to the range to zero it. Performed excellent in that test, so very impressive there. Next test we did, we went to the gun range and tested the accuracy and the performance in load development. Tested it to see if it was zeroed when it came to me. Now, every shooter needs to zero their rifle for themselves, and the results of that test confirmed what we found at the first 1,000-yard test. 1,000-yard test hit a little bit low, about 1 minute low on a 16-inch target. I hit the bottom of that plate, and that was confirmed at the 100-yard range. It was zeroed about 1 minute low. Did not have any issues whatsoever once I reset zero to myself as a shooter, and it just really proved that every shooter should set zero for themselves rather than trusting someone else to do that for them, because it can be a little bit different from one person to the next. So for me, versus where it was set when it came to me, it was 1 minute low. Reset that, and it was great since then for all of my testing since then. As far as on the load development side, I developed loads both on the 6.5 PRC and 7 PRC platforms. I swapped out the barrel and did load development on both of them. They're both fantastic. The full results of that are over in that article, but it was super easy to develop loads, and loads that were grouping sub half MOA with both the 6.5 and 7 PRC with a couple of different bullets and rounds that I messed with. For me, this has been the easiest rifle to do load development on that I have personally ever tested. Getting performance in the sub half MOA category has been really easy with this rifle, so really impressed with that, and that goes for both the 6.5 and 7 PRC barrels. Now, after those first 3 tests, I took this Gunwerks Nexus rifle out and participated in a NRL Hunter match with it, and it did awesome. Those results are obviously much more difficult to quantify with all of the different shooting positions that you are going through, but it did great. It performed very well and performed as good as I personally could as a shooter. I was very impressed with its performance there. And finally, this fall, the most important test for me personally is how it performed out on my hunting trip. For me anyways, that is the pinnacle of what I use a rifle for. That's the most important thing I care about the most. The performance at the range and all of that is very important, to know that you have a rifle that performs well and you have confidence in that weapon when you go to the field. But the in the field use and testing was really the most important for me, and I was able to take a great bull with this rifle, and I had full confidence in this rifle that it would perform when I needed it to. On that hunt, we rode dirt bikes, we hiked a bunch, hauled it on my backpack, strapped it there, and it bounced around, and it did great. And that I even took a spill or two and bumped the gun a little bit, scratched it up. But that's what I wanted to do with this gun, and put it through real world testing, real world use. Rifles are great, but they are meant to be used, and that's what we did with this. So those are the tests we ran the Gunwerks Nexus rifle through, kind of the full gamut, but that's what we wanted to do, a longer term, full gamut type of testing and use on this Gunwerks Nexus rifle. Now for the unique features on this Nexus rifle. It has a bunch of them. It is obviously a beautiful gun. It is well crafted. It has some very unique things like leather patching here on the cheek weld as well as the grip. While that's certainly not necessary on a rifle, it is absolutely gorgeous and is very, very comfortable. So one of those things, don't have to have it, but it sure is nice. Moving on to the stock here, you have a carbon stock. This is the Nexus stock that Gunwerks put together. It has some unique features that I really came to love. This is such a balanced rifle when you are shooting it and carrying it. I really, really enjoyed that part. You have a vertical grip here, which is very, very comfortable and promotes a natural shooting position. That, along with these built-in thumb shelf right here, it just allows you to stick your thumb in the proper position for shooting, so you're not gripping that rifle. Now, this portion of the stock right behind the grip is very thin and narrow, but promotes getting the palm of your thumb here positioned perfectly, so that you use that in conjunction with your thumb rest here, or the thumb shelf, and it really promotes good shooting position. Now, moving up the stock here, you've got a full-length ARCA right here, which is great if you're going to be shooting off a tripod. Then it breaks to about I'd say that's probably about a 2-inch Picatinny rail right there, so you can put your bipod there and still have access to an ARCA rail here if you need to shoot off a tripod or need to utilize that. So a great design there. As far as the clip here, you got a flush mount clip, which is really nice, but it's a double stack and allows you to load from the top as well if you need to do that. It is very nice in that regard. Now, the action here is the Gunwerks NXT action. It is billet aluminum 7075 aircraft grade, so very lightweight, especially for an action that is not titanium, but it approaches that weight category with the way that it's built. It is also featuring a built-in 20 MOA Picatinny rail here, so you don't have to worry about adding an additional rail on top of the action, which is really nice. You've got a 65-degree bolt angle here and a honeycomb style bolt here, which is not only looks really nice, but it allows for less friction here, so the action slides really, really nicely, and it works real nice. It's very tight tolerances there. A lot of your actions out there can be real kind of catchy and grabby, and this one is not that at all. It's very, very smooth, and you know when you're cycling this that it is high quality and well machined. Now, you also have a 3-position safety on this NXT action. The position all the way back locks the bolt down, which is something I am a huge fan of on a hunting rifle. I've had a number of times where a rifle I'm using does not have that, and you are hiking around and you realize that bolt popped open on you. You might have just the bolt hanging there, or you might lose some ammunition or something of that nature. So I don't love that, but I love having that 3-position safety here to lock the bolt down. Of course, second position is on safety, and then the forward position is your fire position. So works really nice, and it's really stiff in its resistance, so it's not easy to bump, which is another thing I really appreciate on a hunting rifle. Another thing I really appreciate here is the shallow tow line. It's great for use with a rear bag in the situations where you are able to do so, whether that be in the field or at the range. It is fantastic for that, and gives you a lot more adjustment range here if you're needing to, of course, make those adjustments with your rear bag to the elevation on the shot. It's great for that. So it's well designed for using a rear bag. Moving on to the barrel, this is a carbon wrapped steel barrel, and it comes in 20 and 24-inch lengths. And it's currently offered in 6.5 PRC, 7 PRC, 300 PRC, and 28 nozzler, with more to come. Probably the most unique thing about this barrel in combination with the NXT action is that it is user changeable. You can swap the barrel out yourself. You don't need to be a gunsmith to do so. I was able to easily swap this barrel from 7 PRC to 6.5 PRC and back and forth whenever I wanted to, and it takes roughly 5 minutes to do so. It's super easy. Just uses 3 T25 screws. Once you take the stock off, 3 T25 screws right here that hold that barrel on, and it is super easy to do. Gunwerks has a great video on how to change that barrel. If you're going to do so, I would recommend watching that just to make sure you get the process and the procedure just right. It's super easy, but just make sure you get that done right. And the barrels also come threaded. It comes with a Gunwerks 2-port side brake, but you can pull that off if you want and put your suppressor on if you have a suppressor. It gives you that option, but it is nice that the barrels come with that suppressor in this package. Now, also unique is that Gunwerks offers a long range package, which is what this is here, minus the suppressor. That is not included, but you can certainly add that on if you would like to. Essentially, the long range package is the rifle with the caliber of your selection, and then you go and select the scope that you would like to have them mount on there. This one is the Revic Accura RS25i. So they mount that scope for you, they zero it, and they install the ballistic turret for you so that you are set to go with their ammo, the Gunwerks 140 grain VLD, in this case with the 6.5 PRC. So it came zeroed and ready to go. Of course, like we talked about earlier, you still want to check your zero for you as the shooter to make sure that that is set. But otherwise, the ballistics are there. You have a QR code that comes with it. You can scan into the Revic app, and it's going to download your ballistic data. So you are ready to go to do some long range shooting right out of the box. And that proved out certainly for us. It's a pretty amazing setup, and it takes a lot of the work out of getting set up to do long range shooting. Allows you just to get to the range and start practicing. You certainly still want to verify your impacts and do your testing for yourself, but they have done a lot of that work for you with the long range packaging that comes ready to go. Now the Nexus is not what I would consider to be an ultralight rifle, coming in at 7 pounds 2 ounces for the 20-inch barrel and 7 pounds 10 ounces with the 24-inch barrel, which is what this setup is here. It's in a long action. They don't offer short action in this, which allows them to offer that barrel swap from a traditionally short action caliber in a 6.5 PRC up to a 300 PRC, which is a long action, of course, in the 7 PRC. So you have a little bit extra weight in that long action, but it allows you that versatility of the user barrel swap. So not super ultra light, but it is certainly packable. It's not overwhelmingly heavy in that regard. Me personally, I like a rifle in that 7 pound range for the ability to control recoil better and have a more balanced rifle. I thought this was an extremely balanced gun. It shot really, really well. And I've found I just like that 7 pound range. Of course, getting into super ultralight where you're sub 6 pounds is great for packability, but a little more difficult to shoot, and you suffer a little bit in that regard. So something to consider though, this is not an ultralight rifle. It is a rifle that is very, very shootable, very balanced, and has a little bit of extra weight in it because of that. Now for some of the things I liked and didn't like so much about the Nexus rifle after using it for nearly a year. Start with some of the things I liked. The stock build and design is absolutely phenomenal. It really promotes good shooting form. I found it to be exceptionally comfortable. The thumb shelf here works really, really well, and it just promotes a great shooting form. I really appreciated that. The bolt is very, very smooth, and the tolerances are very tight. I really liked the 65-degree bolt angle as well. It just all worked together exceptionally well. I like the design of the shallow toe line here for shooting with a rear bag. And this Picatinny rail, the Arca rail with the Picatinny on the end is a phenomenal design. I like to be able to shoot off a tripod and have the ability to shoot with a bipod. Out west here, sometimes you can have either or, and having the ability to have both of those is fantastic. Absolutely loved the ability to change the barrel. You can buy one rifle and have multiple barrels for that, for different situations, and they're super easy to swap. So really, really appreciate that. I also really appreciated how easy load development was with this rifle. It's been easier with this Gunwerks Nexus than any other rifle I have personally tested, and I really appreciate that. It just makes that process that much easier. I worked up a number of different loads for both the 7 PRC and 6.5 PRC, and it was always the same story. A bad group in that is like a 1-minute group. So if that's your baseline and you're working forward from that, I was pretty impressed with that. I was able to get some excellent groups with the 7 PRC at 0.30 and with the 6.5 PRC at 0.42. So excellent groups, and that's without a whole lot of tinkering with seating depth and other things. Those were just the loads that came together fairly easily with this rifle. Now, one caveat to that was that for whatever reason, when I put the 7 PRC barrel on here and put on the 180 grain A-tip bullet, it was shooting really well in really, really good groups up to about 2,700 feet per second. Once I crested above that, the groups opened up and just really couldn't get the velocity, the combination of the velocity and the grouping that I wanted. So it didn't love. I tried a couple different powders. The groups weren't bad, but they weren't to the satisfactory of what I would be looking for sub half-minute groups with a gun like this. So moved on to a different bullet, which is fine. Not every gun's going to love every bullet, and that's just always the way it goes with reloading. But just want to make that note that that was the only bullet that I've found so far that this gun did not shoot well. Now, I also really appreciated this 3-position safety. That's just something that is often overlooked or understated in rifles, particularly hunting rifles. Just something that I really find to be super useful in a hunting rifle to make sure that bolt stays closed when it's supposed to. When you're hiking around in the mountains and you might brush up against trees or stumps or branches or whatnot that might yank on that bolt. So that's really something that I really appreciate. And I really like this flush mount magazine. I've had magazines that stick out and they can get caught on your backpack and those kinds of things. So I really appreciate that. And it's really, really well made also. Now, a couple of downsides and things I didn't love about the Nexus rifle. One being kind of that tension between weight and packability, ultralight versus a standard weight or a heavy rifle. I love packing an ultralight rifle, which this isn't necessarily, particularly in the 7PRC with a 24-inch barrel, and then you throw on a suppressor and a scope here, you're well over 10 pounds with the rifle. So that's not bad, but it's on the heavier side certainly. It's more shootable, but you're sacrificing that packability. So I have a love-hate with ultralight rifles and rifles like this that are very shootable, and they're going to do what they're meant to do much better than an ultralight rifle, but you're sacrificing some of that packability. So I love it, but I don't love it as far as the weight being just over 7 pounds on this, and as far as a base weight. So it's one of those tension things for me. It's a love-hate thing. Another thing that I found that's not necessarily something I didn't like, but something you just need to be aware of that I learned in utilizing this clip. It's very well made, but there's a certain process here that you want to use. And if you don't do it quite right, then it's going to cause you some frustration. So you want the back end of this clip to go in first, and it needs to go up high enough. Otherwise, if it doesn't, the clip won't go in. It won't clip into place. So you want that to go in far enough, and then it goes in really nice and easy. But it can be a little bit finicky. The tolerances are so tight in there that if you don't get it just right, that clip might not want to go in there. So you could have a situation where you're in crunch time. Let's say you empty your gun on an animal and you need to throw another clip in or pull this out and go ahead and put it back in there. If you're haven't done it much, it's easy to not have that clip want to stay in there. So you gotta get that back end in there first, and then it goes in real easy. But it's a little bit finicky, just something you want to practice a little bit and be aware of with the Nexus rifle. Now, one last thing that I didn't love is more about the Revic scope here, not so much the Nexus rifle, but since this is a long range package, I'll mention it here. I love the Revic scope. I love everything about it, except for the eye box is just a little bit tight. Now, I've used a lot of different rifle scopes, and some are more forgiving than others. And this one is on the less forgiving side of some of those scopes that I've used. I wish it was a little bit more forgiving. That's more conducive to reacquiring your target after a shot, those sorts of things. But it's not terrible by any stretch, but it is a little bit tighter than some of the other ones I've used. The turrets are super tactile. The parallax here is really nice and smooth. The capped windage here, and you have illumination, push button illumination. So really a nice scope. I love the turret as well. It's excellent, but that eye box is just a little bit tight. So that is the Gunwerks Nexus rifle. It is an amazing gun. The attention to detail, the thought behind the design, absolutely incredible. It's obviously beautifully made, but most important, it performs really, really well. It passed every test we threw at it with flying colors, and just gives you confidence as a shooter, which is what you really want when you're in the field, when it counts. Drop any questions or comments. We'd love to help you out if we can. Happy to help and answer those questions. Thanks for watching here today, and we will see you next time.